when I was 14 years old and attending Catholic school, one of my classmates gave me a book. It was a forbidden book, and told me to read it. So I read it, and I got caught reading it by one of the nuns, who absolutely flipped out when she saw me reading the book and said I was going to hell and all of this stuff. And I didn't even like the book. To be honest with you, I cut through it pretty fast, and I felt like I had to take a spiritual shower after I got done reading it. And that book is J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye. And I wondered for a long time why that book haunted me, because I didn't like it. And then I came upon your work about J.D. Salinger and Catcher in the Rye and what's going on behind the scenes. And so I'm going to give you the floor. Let's start with J.D. Salinger's origins and where he worked and who he worked for and all that.
Well, I mean, Salinger was military intelligence, OSS in World War II. He debriefed German prisoners. And the internet information is that he worked with Henry Kissinger, though I don't have a good citation on that fact. But it's very plausible because Kissinger was intelligence in the same area.
Yes, he was.
He was, Salinger was, a graduate of Valley Forge High School, memory serves. And it's a high school, one of these high schools that has kind of a known Freemasonic connection. There was nothing in his high school years that I can, attribute to any particular philosophy, but he produced The Catcher in the Rye while he was working as a member of the OSS. There are pictures of him writing it in military uniform in Europe while the war was going on. It is well known, and the reason why I became sort of interested in what occurred is that the book is associated with assassinations. All right, Mark David Chapman, after he killed Lenin, he was just sitting there calmly reading A Catcher in the Rye. John Hinckley was carrying the book with him when he tried to kill Reagan, and it's alleged, though I don't have a citation, that Lee Harvey Oswald had the book in his apartment. He had very few books. So, and then there are others as well. There's a clusters of what not as well-known individuals, but so there was this association with the book to assassination. The Catcher in the Rye seems to relate to Holden Caulfield's misunderstanding of Robert Burns's poem, in which he sees himself inspired by the poem to catch children for some reason. He's catching them. And so
That's right.
What the Catcher in the Rye actually means is the Grim Reaper. A catcher is a scythe,
Yep.
which would be held by someone, going through the wheat fields and cutting things down. And this, of course, is the representation of the Grim Reaper, who is a representation of the apocalypse. So that's just the beginning of the sort of understanding, the wordplay that's occurring here. Is the Catcher in the Rye is basically a representation of the apocalypse.
That's very, very interesting because the seventh planet, the sky is like the letter number 7, and 7 is associated with, of course, the seventh planet, which is Saturn, but also Saturn is associated with the Grim Reaper. He is, yep.
Yeah. So you can see the body of symbolism is to some extent unified. So the play begins very simply with Holden is in trouble at school, and the first thing he screws up is he's given 28 days to study the Egyptians.
Right.
Now he's relating to the first rite of Freemasonry, the apprentice, where you have 28 days to study the Egyptians. He uses Egyptians, which is a straightforward way of representing Freemasonry because of the Egyptian kind of symbolism, like Horus, for example,
Yep.
that they use. So they're studying, he gets to study the Egyptians for 28 days. Now, in this period, Caulfield talks about the trouble he has, and this again, it's another way of you get to see what he's talking about. He says, the people in the school, and I'm just going to quote him. He says, and they had this goddamn secret fraternity that I was too yellow not to join. A secret fraternity. What is it? Well, it's Freemasonry.
Yep.
And he does join it. So anyway, so he has 28 days to study the Egyptians, and they don't give the 28 days. You have to ferret it out because he actually says we studied the Egyptians from November the 4th to December the 2nd, which is this is the 28 days that you would have. So anyway, that's the rite of entered apprentice. Now they go on to another one. I'm going to insert not one of the Freemason rites, but just a detail. He talks throughout the book about his people shooting hat.
Yep.
The people shooting hat.
Yeah. When I wear this hat, when I'm shooting people.
When I shoot people, and he closes one eye. He goes, I sort of close one eye.
That's right.
Right. This is a people shooting hat. I shoot people. Now this is the Masonic fez because it's red, which is the color of a deer hat, and so it's a typologic reference to basically kind of violent secret inside of Freemasonry. The idea that it's a people shooting hat, the one eye. I mean, it's just like not wholesome, Now,
well, hang on. We know that the Templars, they learned the arts of assassination from the old man in the mountain. He had an assassin school, and they learned, and he taught the Templars, who were the forerunners to the Freemasons, the arts of how you control politics through assassination.
Yeah, that's right. Robert Burns's poem, Coming Through the Rye. Now that poem has several versions of it. In the cleaned up version, the idea is can a body kiss a body coming through the rye? It's about, young love, someone seeing a person, she's in petticoats and she's in the wheat field and he wants to kiss her, right? However, there's actually a well-known version which uses the F word. You've transformed the sort of romantic idea to more, violent. In this passage, he talks about he wants the whorehouse version to be sung. He says, yeah, I want to sing the whorehouse version. The brothers leave him alone. He's able to go into what is called the Holy of Holies, right? This would be the, in every Masonic lodge, they have a sanctum, a sanctorum. It represents the Holy of Holies of King Solomon's temple. And in there are the secrets, the high-level secrets that the common Mason doesn't have. Caulfield is able to go into this sanctum by himself, and he looks on the wall, and there is the expression. And I hope you don't mind me using obscenity, but it's unfortunately necessary here. He sees the handwriting on the wall. Fuck you.
So, I remember well.
This is the. And then he says that he says, if I die, Caulfield says, I want that on my tombstone, the FU. So what you're seeing is, unfortunately, Salinger's cryptic representation of the deepest secret of Masonry, which I think is that it is it has malevolence toward the rest of mankind, basically. Right. It's FU. Okay, so the next time we see Caulfield, he's on the West Coast and he's getting psychiatric treatment. Because if you start giving away secrets, then everyone you'll start missing everyone, right?
Yeah. You tell people if you tell people things, and then they start disappearing.
This is exactly like what Mark Twain does in Huckleberry Finn. Now he ends it where in Tom Sawyer, when Huck and Tom are talking, and they says, well, when are you going to start the gang and turn robbers? He says, "Oh, right off. We'll get the boys together and have the initiation tonight." Have the which? Have the initiation. What's that? It's to swear to stand by one another and never tell the gang secrets. And even if you're chopped all the finders and kill anybody and all his family that hurts one of the gang. Now, of course, when you talk about initiation and Twain is a lifetime Freemason.
33rd degree. So that what he's saying is that you can't get away from us, no matter where you go.
Yeah,
we'll,
exactly.
we'll be there, and our intention is malevolent.
Yes, exactly.
That's clear. Okay, let me ask you one other question.
Sure.
Well, I got a bunch of questions, but do you have any idea why the book is always read?
It's because it's promoted by the cultural officials. In other words, it's a horrible book.
Yes, it is.
Incoherent. No one really ever understands it.
No.
Caulfield is a cultural degenerate that has absolutely no redeeming value, but people want people to read the book because the level of control over our school system, I think, has a lot of Masonic influence within it. And what the book does, of course, is it subtly is saying, keep your mouth shut, keep silent about the malevolent secret of Freemasonry. So when you look at like Lenin's assassination, he'd had a few months before his interview in Playboy where he said he says, "I like craftsmen, but I don't want to be a craftsman."
Yeah.
And then he talks about the CIA creating LSD. Right. Okay.
The Beatles are a myth, he said in that interview.
You got it. So anyway, now the assassination with someone holding the book is more understandable.
Definitely.
This is just their way of telling, those who might think about going down the path Lenin is going down, keep your mouth shut or you can be killed.
I absolutely agree with you. He was killed for that Playboy interview.
Yeah. So, the first thing you have to know is that it's based on Lewis Carroll's poem, The Carpenter and the Walrus.
Hang on one second. Because I don't want to hold that thought. We're going to talk about I Am the Walrus. I just want to do a little bit of reiteration on Salinger before we switch. Salinger was in the OSS with precursor to the CIA. He was in Germany at the end of World War II, debriefing and probably part of Operation Paperclip. Let's just face it, he probably was. Yeah. So he was helping bringing in certain people into the United States, including the people that worked with Joseph Mengele on the MK Ultra programs, which is the mind control programs. So Salinger is deep into all of that. He writes this book while he's in there. Okay, this book has Freemasonic allusions all through it. It's got a red cover, and I believe that somewhere in my research, there's a secret book in Freemasonry which is called the Red Book, and I think that's why they always make the cover red. And several assassins have had the book in their possession, and we're not saying that the book itself causes people to assassinate people. What I think is going on, I think you may have said this before, is that if an assassin has the book in his possession, that's a signal to all the Freemason people that this is a hit. The writer of Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson claims he worked on the MK Ultra program. And Mel Gibson is obsessed with Catcher in the Rye in that movie, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, I mean, Lenin certainly understands and comes from, in my opinion, the world of sort of Freemason
definitely
production of culture. I mean, this is the Beatles. I see them as artificial. They were put into culture to start the process by which you'd have the sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
It's all a Tavistock creation, and Brian and Epstein was part of it, but George Martin was part of it, and they probably didn't even write their own songs or any of it.
And that means there's absolutely no chance at all that, and as I see it, that Lenin could have written I Am the Walrus, because I am
Not
the
after
walrus.
hearing your analysis.
And whoever put the thing together was well read, and particularly in terms of Freemasonic genocides.
Yep.
At the very beginning of the poem of the story of the song, Lennon paraphrases "Marching to Pretoria," and he changes the word to "I am he" instead of "I'm with you." Now, "I am he" is one of the pet phrases of Aleister Crowley.
Right. It was.
Right. So the "I am he" is it certainly is Crowley's concept, because in the Playboy interview, Lennon references to Crowley,
Yep.
and he mentions, he goes, look, the whole Beatle idea was, do what thou wilt. He refers to
He
the
did.
Crowleyan foundation, and I think if Lennon is actually trying to, like, get off the reservation, he's trying to let people understand this is a Crowleyan satanic project.
Yes, it is.
It's-
Yeah. We just did a show about a month ago on the Beatles and mind control, and how it's impossible that they could have written 200 songs in that time period. And George Martin thought they didn't even have any talent, and he rejected them when Brian Epstein first introduced them to him. And he says, interestingly, but I did like their personalities, right? What George Martin saw was not a group of musicians. He saw a bunch of goofballs that he could make music for, and then use them for their Tavistock control scheme. And Lennon is constantly associated with Christianity, whether he said that we were bigger than Jesus. There's a famous story of Lennon. I think it was in New York. He's sitting on the balcony of his hotel room, and a group of Christians are marching by with their signs and stuff, and he's pissing on them. I mean, literally, he starts pissing on them.
I have a very good friend named Robert Forte, and he is one of the sort of originators of psychedelic therapy, and he knew, like, Tim Leary very well. In fact, lived with Leary at the end of his life.
Yep.
And he said, in his opinion, that Leary was definitely CIA plant, there to create counterculture.
Definitely.
But he said that at the end, he said he was tortured, and that at the time he didn't understand what Leary had done. But now, looking back on it, it seems clear to him. I don't want to give too much here, because I know Robert's actually writing a book about this right now. But
can't wait.
You can, you can see that what they're doing is so brutal and so evil that it's hard to imagine a human personality that wouldn't eventually start to have a reaction against that. And so Lennon's interviews seemed like perhaps sunlight was starting to get into his heart, but boy, it got slammed shut there, didn't it? The message got out.
Yeah, and I knew somebody probably that he knows also who was with Leary there at the end, as a woman. It's actually sort of famous woman. And I met her and had a long talk with her. And I said, so did you ever ask, Tim, if he was CIA? She said, yeah, right near the end. I said, a lot of people, Tim, say you're CIA. Are you? And he said, well, what was I supposed to do? Join the KGB?
The OG, use an expression, so